Following the 1983 video game crash, many considered the North American video game market dead, but a Japanese company named Nintendo managed to work its way into the mainstream using clever marketing tactics and innovative quality control. The result was the Nintendo Entertainment System, which launched in North America October 18th, 1985. The system in its various forms would come to sell over 60 million units worldwide, but with Nintendo's quality control came a strict censorship policy enforced by Nintendo of America. Today we will explore Nintendo's so-called family-friendly policy, the ways it influenced gaming, and how Nintendo eventually discarded it for a more liberal policy. Many of Nintendo's systems featured Lockout technology, which at first made it difficult to make games without Nintendo's approval. The original Japanese Famicom lacked such a chip and thus had a wide variety of bootleg games, but by the time Nintendo released the Western NES, they had developed a chip which could block third-party cartridges. While developers eventually found workaround technology, the chip did help Nintendo to impose their rules on third parties. With this leverage, Nintendo of America set strict standards for developers, which they had to follow in order to have games published on the NES. Third-party publishers were restricted to 5 games a year, which had to remain NES exclusives for at least 2 years. These policies also included rules meant to keep all game content family-friendly in regards to what Nintendo of America referred to as the norms of society. Over time, Nintendo expanded and fine-tuned their policies. While there is no definitive list of all of these changes in development, authors Steven and Janet Schwartz obtained a letter from Nintendo describing the policies for their 1994 book, The Parent's Guide to Video Games. The bans were extensive and included, to quote, 1. Include sexually suggestive or explicit content including rape and or nudity. 2. Contain language or depiction which specifically denigrates members of either sex. 3. Depict random, gratuitous and or excessive violence. 4. Depict graphic illustration of death. 5. Depict domestic violence and or abuse. 6. Depict excessive force in a sports game beyond what is inherent in actual contact sports. 7. Reflect ethnic, religious, nationalistic, or sexual stereotypes of language. This includes symbols that are related to any type of racial, religious, or nationalistic or ethnic group, such as crosses, pentagrams, God, gods, Roman mythological gods are acceptable, Satan, hell, and Buddha. 8. Use profanity or obscenity in any form or incorporate language or gestures that could be offensive by prevailing public standards and tastes. 9. Incorporate or encourage the use of illegal drugs, smoking materials, and or alcohol. 10. Include subliminal political messages or overt political statements. Nintendo's letter also speaks about why these rules were created, saying, "Since 1988, we have consistently tested the content of all games developed for Nintendo systems against our evolving game standards. As our business has matured, we have adapted our guidelines to meet the concerns of the members of our target age group and their parents. Although we realize that definitions of social, cultural, and political views are highly subjective, we will continue to provide consumers with entertainment that reflects the acceptable norms of society." The effects of this policy also reached beyond the US Nintendo market. Through European releases and ports, a lot of the changes made reached other continents and even non-Nintendo systems. Many games were changed in both minor and dramatic ways to comply with Nintendo's policy, and you can find plenty of examples of how games were toned down over on the channel already. However, it's hard to address Nintendo's family-friendly policy without touching upon Mortal Kombat. Famous for its over-the-top violence, the original game thus suffered severely under the hands of the censors. While the arcade and Sega Genesis versions of Mortal Kombat featured fatal finishing moves known as fatalities, the SNES version strictly toned these down. All of the gameplay's blood was also removed and replaced with a greyish sweat. Interestingly, because of the Nintendo version's poor sales, the Western SNES port of 1994's Mortal Kombat 2 would then be released uncensored despite Nintendo's policies. To add to this, Nintendo curiously released a censored version in Japan that turned all blood to green and changed the screen black and white during fatalities. A game being censored in Japan and uncensored in the West during this time period was virtually unheard of. This era of censorship had a profound effect on the industry, but beginning with games such as Mortal Kombat 2, Nintendo began to slowly allow the family-friendly policy to lapse as they licensed increasingly mature titles. Amongst the most notable of these was the 1997 GoldenEye 007, a first-person shooter based on the James Bond movie from 2 years prior. The level of violence in the game actually offended the developer of Mario and Nintendo executive Shigeru Miyamoto, who felt the game was too violent and tragic. GoldenEye would not be developers Rare's last attempt to push the envelope. The company developed several mature titles for the Nintendo 64, perhaps the most notorious of these is Conker's Bad Fur Day. The game, released in 2001, late in the Nintendo 64's lifecycle, features cursing, violence and sexual humour. While Nintendo objected to some scenes, such as a portrayal of a vivisection and a Ku Klux Klan reference, according to director Chris Seaver, the game was largely left intact. The Nintendo 64 also features ports of several Resident Evil games, which features their blood and gore intact, such as Resident Evil 2. While the N64 version allowed players to adjust the level of violence, players could still play the game with the blood and gore intact. While Nintendo still somewhat maintains their family-friendly image, perhaps the best symbol for the current state of Nintendo's policies is Night Trap, the interactive movie which controversially features scantily clad actresses and a plot revolving around vampiric beings known as augurs. During the 1993 congressional hearings on video game violence, Nintendo Senior Vice President Howard Lincoln stated that Night Trap would never be on a Nintendo console.
Obviously, it would not pass our guidelines. This game, which as you've indicated, promotes violence against women, simply has no place in our society.
Lincoln's statement has been challenged on the grounds that due to hardware and licensing reasons, Night Trap couldn't even be adapted to the Nintendo systems available at the time, and some have also criticised Lincoln as using the game to unfairly stigmatise Sega. But regardless of his intentions, Nintendo overturned Lincoln's statement 25 years later, in an iconic move which saw Night Trap 25th Anniversary Edition being announced for the Nintendo Switch in 2018. Furthermore, Nintendo seems determined to expand its market to a more adult audience, with entries like Galgun 2, which combines risque shots of girls with rail shooter mechanics, and Doom, the legendary FPS known for its extreme violence. Nintendo's family-friendly policy remains a touchstone in video game history, and Censored Gaming is committed to covering gaming's past as well as its present and future. How do you feel about the policy, and what games would you like to see us cover next? Please let us know in the comments below, and until next time, thank you for watching.